and most importantly, actually move to taking action, because we need a lot more action. There are a lot of people out there being inspired and educated, but we've got an execution problem. We need people to actually do these things versus just talk about them. So you want to think about usability. Thirdly, on the sort of in the realm of teach a man or a woman to fish, you want to try to teach your audience how to think for themselves. Teach them the general concepts and the approach such that they can take that going forward, so that they can develop the internal tools so that they can look at products and services and really gauge for themselves, do the back of the napkin calculations, and really sort of get a grip for how they should view things. So you want to teach them to think for themselves. So things like life cycle analysis, or the scale of things. Like, we have a big scale problem. Of all the green things that you can do in your life, often people view them on all the same levels. Well, recycling, while it really is sort of core to green, that's what people think about when they think about green, compared to doing something like buying renewable energy for your home or your office, recycling's small. Buying renewable energy is really big. And so understanding scale so that you can focus on the things that really make an impact is important. So we want to teach people how to think for themselves, understand the larger concepts. We also want to get people to start. There's a lot of information out there, and it's easy to get paralyzed. And what I like to say is we should push people to just get started. You're going to make some mistakes. You're going to go down some wrong roads. You're going to do some things that you, in retrospect, shouldn't have. The important thing is to get going and not get paralyzed. So get people to start. Two more things. One, you want to get the mix right. So I believe that we need a combination of inspired by fear and inspired by hope. We need a little bit of inspired by fear. Inspired by fear is inconvenient truth, right? The vast majority of that is inspired by fear. But we also need inspired by hope, and I think most of it should be that. So getting that mix right is really critical. You want to get people to understand the why and then the how. And finally, and this is important, you want to be real. I think that Tree Hugger has had a lot of success in that it's very authentic. And if you want to connect with people, if you want to resonate with people, you have to come from a real place. And once you do that, then people can connect. If you're trying to pretend that you're someone that you're not, if you're overly formal, it's much harder to connect. And so if you really want to have impactful media, you really want to think about how to be real. And that brings me to the walk it section. And really, it's sort of playing on that. So I talked to you about talking it, now we're talking about walking it. So I believe that if you really want to make a difference, you need to be the change. And Gandhi said it, and he meant it, and he did it. And you could see what happened there. So the greenies in general do too much talking and not enough walking. And so you need to live it, you need to be it, you need to experience things on a really visceral level so that you can really tell a story, so that you can connect, so that you can resonate with people. So basically, it's much easier to sell something that you really care about and that you really understand than something that you've just sort of read about, something that's conceptual. So just a couple examples in my personal life, and I'm trying to really spend time on greening my life down to the last little bit. I have a folding bike. It's a Strida. And so I could have read an article and then I could talk about it, but having owned one and used it, I get it on a visceral level. I can talk about it passionately. I really understand it. And that makes media that much more powerful. So basically what I want to say is that if you're in this space and you want to affect change, you absolutely have to think about how you talk it, so that approach. But you can be way more powerful if you actually walk it. And so taking that time for you and your staff to really start living this is really important.
That's great.
Thank you very much, everyone. I think you've given me a great segue there, Graham, just to go into something that as moderator, I'm going to try and be a chemical here that stimulates some discussion. And to put a little bit into the mix, I'm a young family father in a community that doesn't have a lot of cash, and I have decided to go to the supermarket, and I have the choice between certain eggs to buy, and I'm always going to go for the cheapest because that's in my budget. My question to all of you is, how do we get that trigger in the brain of, like, everyone in this room is converted. Majority of these people, I'd say everyone here is converted. We know what we want to do. We know where we want to go. We know what we want to try and do. And listening to these wonderful people gives us those ideas. But in the media, how do we tip that or trigger that synapse? How do we get into someone's brain in a way that they don't flick over to friends, they don't change the channel, they don't stop listening, they don't go, oh, here we go again. We've heard it so much. What is the point there? And how do we actually go for that? Where do we go for that? How would you do it? Vima, or anyone?
Oh, I could not give you a cookbook recipe, but I would venture that to start with, you have to know where you are working, because the concepts that we have heard in communications are very good, very valid, but could get in trouble at the point of delivery. When your audience is not as conversant, not only with the idioms, but even with the language. Today I overheard a conversation where people were discussing about a meeting with 100 young people who were very bright, but when it came to talk, they could not express themselves, although they could speak English well. Well, I would caution people that if you see somebody who speaks English well, it doesn't mean that that person thinks in English, or has an English Anglo-Saxon type of courage, or that he's as versatile in the language as the communicators are. I studied English as a child in Europe for 4 years. I studied in the States, went to school, graduate school, 6 years. I became an international consultant. I became a presidential spokesman. I met with 60 statesmen, but still, if I have to speak English, I get butterflies in my stomach, which I don't get if I speak in Indonesian. It comes naturally. So if you do not communicate in a way that is comfortable for the audience, then you have to think about getting some local sensitivities. Walking the walk, not just in terms of the discipline, but in terms of the locality. Walking the walk in Sumatra is different from walking the walk in West Java. Okay, the other big point is, I assume that much of the global environment community works with governments. You have the Norwegian governments, you have the UNDP, you have the English, German government, and they work with the Indonesian governments. The Indonesian government is very well represented in this international forum. I know people close to me who go through one conference in Kinshasa, maybe not in Kinshasa, somewhere, in Nairobi, and they go to another conference in Stockholm, going through the year to 5 international conferences. When they are here, they take a rest. And in the meantime that these people are gone, the local politicos, the parliament, you know, they sabotage the president's commitment to the targets of expressed in Pittsburgh and in Boston in 2004. So if you laud the Indonesian government, which they deserve, then you should also help them in enforcing the authority of the government to the local population in terms of communications. Do you know that the president of Indonesia does not have one television channel that is neutral to him? Least of all friendly. They are all hostile to him. They threw out the best finance minister in the world through slander and cabal, and the president could not resist. So it's not the politicians that get blamed, it's the president who gets blamed for not standing up firmly. So if he stands up for climate change and his minister speaks against it and he doesn't fire the minister, we have a serious problem. So how do we help that? Getting people to communicate, people with blogs, people on social networks, people with citizen journalism, citizen TV. You could help them get a voice. Otherwise, it will just be 2 steps forward and, well, maybe 3 steps forward and 1 step backward. There's no doubt that I am very happy about the development that, you know,